Hello and welcome back to Concept First to Mastery. So in this section of our CSS beginner series, we'll be looking at CSS transitions and CSS animations. And in order to cap up that, we'll be trying to build infinite art slider, right? So I'm going to show you that. So we're just going to see how we can do that. It's very beautiful with purely HTML and CSS. But of course, as the practices, before we go into the building, we look at some basic things, right? That helps our understanding when it comes to working with transitions and animations in CSS. So without much ado, let's get into that. So this is what we are going to be building quickly, right? So the beautiful thing about this is that it combines both animation and transition. So if you don't know how to actually differentiate between animation here and transition, so I will advise you to watch this video to the end, and you'll be able to do that like a pro. Like, it will be clear in your mind what transition is, what animation is, and you'll be able to identify it, right? So you can see that we have a lot going on here, right? And it's also very beautiful. We have this neon effect around the border and on the title of each of the ad content, right? So just watch this to the end and you are going to love it. So let's start by looking at why animations and transitions matter in modern web design, right? Of course, you will appreciate animations more when you have this understanding. So we have the fact that it enhances user engagement, right? For instance, if you want to click on a buy button, right, and you place a transition there or any form of animation there, so usually it might make a user curious, right, to kind of want to engage with that button and click on that button, which might eventually lead to the purchase of that particular product. That's just one example. So it enhances user engagement. Then it improves user experience also. For instance, I know you must have attempted to do some things online before, and you will see a spinner like a loader, right, telling you that, okay, this process is on, as against just leaving you blank, right? You just have a rolling spinner. That's an example of animation. It improves your user experience because you know that the action that I've carried out is actually being processed, right? Then it makes interface faces feel more natural, right? In real life, everything is all about action. Like if you go out there, things are not just static. People are moving. Somebody is raising up hands. Somebody is carrying something. That's the natural atmosphere that we are used to, right? So on the web too, a web interface can be made more natural when you have transitions and animations, everywhere, right? So we also have the fact that it strengthens brand identity, right? So if you use a customized animation, that can drive attention to your brand, right? People see the animation and they just attach it to your brand. So it can also be used to promote your brand. So let's just quickly talk about real world. Let's see some real world examples of animation, right? For instance, Google, right? Tesla, Spotify. These are big players, right, in the tech industry. They all used animation. If you go to their website, right, you are going to see that there is one form of animation and transition there. So let me just show you something quickly also. So if you actually visit this website, right, loading.io, you will notice that we have animations going on here. So this is a library that actually allows you to make use of animations easily, right? You don't have to go through the hassle of trying to create one. You can just copy the HTML, the CSS, and you use it, right? So, but of course, we are here to learn how it works, and that's why we're just trying to look at instead of looking for where to copy everywhere. So this is a loading state, right? This is a loading animation, right? You can see that it looks good. You can see these animations here. They are infinite, and that is why it keeps on happening. You can see this moving small balls, right? This page is full of animations, right? You can see this also, this animated, right? So I will still talk about how animation is different from transitions, right? These are different forms of loading elements. So you can see what is happening here also. So animations are powerful. See this also, right? So they just make your website look good, and at the same time, they make it more interactive. It's as simple as that. For instance, look at here now. This is another way of saying something is loading, right? And by the time the result is back, you just replace the result with this. So the same thing with this. I just want to show you where you can easily work with the HTML. So of course, with what I'm talking about here, there is no JavaScript required for it to work. So, okay, I think there's an example here that allows you to actually implement. Okay, I will look for that actually. Okay, yeah, this is it, right? So you can see this loading, right? And you can see this. So without doing anything, you can just copy this and make it work. For instance, now if I were to copy this, right? If I had to copy this, I've already created a project folder that we can use to work, right? So there is nothing in here, just like we normally do. Let's do, let's just say index here dot html, right? And here we can quickly generate a boilerplate for that. And here we can just paste our code just to test that this is working. And in the head section, so I'm going to make this inline, right? In the head section, we can just, okay, let's just create the CSS file since we are still going to do that. So I will just say styles, style.css. So nothing in there. You can just come here and make sure that this is actually linked, right, to the CSS file. That's the slash style.css, right? So what the next part is, you can see that there's no JavaScript implementation there, which is more efficient, right? So all you just need to do here is copy this that you are giving. So I will still explain what is going on here, right? So that even when you have to copy and tweak some things, right, you know exactly what to tweak because you know how it works. So here you can just paste this here in the style section. So what you can do is just try to start this, right? And you're going to see that the spinner so the aim here is actually to help you see and understand how this works actually, right? So that's not where we are going to. So this is actually what we want to build. So you can see these elegant animations here, right? So we are going to do that. I just want to run through some concepts before we get into that. All right, so now you've seen some animations in real life applications, right? So I didn't bother going to this website, but if you can visit them, right, just go to google.com, go to Google site, go to Tesla site, go to Spotify site, you will see all these things and you'll be able to identify them. So the next thing is what are CSS animations and transitions, right? While I've shown you some examples and a brief intro about why you should use CSS animations and transitions, right? We need to also understand what animations are and what transitions are and how they are different. So CSS transitions actually allow you to smoothly change CSS properties over time. So take note of that definition, right? You know already about CSS properties, but you can transition. Transition is moving from one point to another. But in this case, now we are talking about CSS properties. So you are trying to change from one CSS property to another over time. right? Not like it's going to happen instantly. So you are doing it over time, which makes it have this good feel and effect, right? So allows you to smoothly change CSS properties over time instead of instantly switching from one state to another. So this makes your UI interaction more fluid, right? And visually appealing, just like the way things happen in real life, right? Things just happen. If I push someone in real life, it's going to be smooth. It's not just going to be instant, right? So, and there's going to be a time to it and something like that. So that's what we are talking about. So that's it with CSS transition. Just change your CSS property from one point to another, or change your CSS property over time, right? That's what CSS transition is. Then how can we implement CSS transition? So usually CSS transition require that there is a form of interaction from the user with the elements on the page, right? So CSS transition will not work if the user does not interact with the element on the page. So a transition happens when an element changes from one style to another. So usually maybe you have an hover effect on a button, right? So and you're saying the actual button is black, and you're saying the moment the hover effect event is triggered, right? You are saying that the color should change to green or whatsoever you want. You can even scale. You can do many things with transition. You can scale, you can rotate, you can translate also, depending on what you want to do with that. But the thing that stands out is that there must be user interaction, right, with that element on the page. For instance, the one I just showed you here, this site here, right? Some of them, if you come up here, okay, I think purely we just, okay, if I click on this button, can you see that? When I moved away, it's transparent. It just picks up the background image of this header. But the moment I move my cursor in, you can see that we have that dark shade of the color. So that's what I mean by transition. And it actually happens over time. It's not just instant. So there are other places where you have transition. Okay, transition is not on this, but usually you will also see transition effect on navigation items and the rest. So that's just an example of transition there. All right. So how do we use transition? Let's just quickly walk through that. I know I'll still use it in the project, but it's something that we can quickly run through. So just down here, what I will do is I will create a button, just something simple, right? And I will just say click me, or let's just say buy now. Buy now. That's it, right? So I don't need to do much. I can just come down to the CSS here, right? And just say button. Of course, I'm using the HTML tag to target the elements. And I can just say, let's just say padding of top bottom of 0.6 rem, right? And left and right of, let's just say 2 rem, right? Or 1.5 rem, just something random, right? Then we can say background color of let's say background color of violet, right? And text of white. That's font. Let's say color of white, right? So by the time you come to the page, let's see, you get this. So can you see this now? But there is no animation there. So if I want that cursor to, you can just say cursor of pointer, and that will make sure that I have that hand effect. So can you see that? Now, what I want is that when I hover on that button, I want the color to change to green over time. So usually it's not green that you will use, right? Depending on what your color of choice. So here, I will just say button, that same button element, right? Then you target the hover state on hover, right? So this is a pseudo class selector. On hover, you want to say, let's set the background color to green, right? So that's very visible to us. And let's set the color, the text color. You can even scale, but I don't want to, I can say here, I can say transform, right? I will talk about transform eventually, and I can just say scale, and I'll just say scale to 1.5. So it's going to be bigger, right? That's transition for you. So what I now want is that here on this actual button, you are going to define something, right? And that will be transition itself. This is where you want to control how this will transit, this color will transit from what we have here to what we have here. So I'll just say all property. That means whatever property is specified in this overstate for this button should have that transition effect. And I would say for what duration, let's just say 1 second, right? And there is what we call timing function, right? More like how you want it to happen. You have these options. You have ease, you have ease in, you have ease out, you have ease in, and all that. So I'll just choose ease in, ease out, right? So by the time you come here and you over on this, so can you see that it grew out, right? And it went back, it grew out, and the color changed, and everything that we specified changed over time, right? And it grew out. So that's what we mean by transition. So you can see that nothing happened if I did not over on it. That's why I said there must be some form of user interaction for that to happen. So that's out about an example here, right? Whatever you need to do is left to your own imagination skill, right? But that's just the basic usage of transition. So then let's move to animations, right? So CSS animations actually allow you to create complex animations that can run automatically without user interaction, right? So the difference between this and the one we just looked at, transition, is that this one is automated, right? So here is an example. You can see that this has been rolling since, right? I do not need to over on it. So this is animation effect. This one is transition effect because it requires user interaction, right? So unlike transition, they don't require a trigger like over or click. Instead, they just run using keyframe. So it is this keyframe we are going to be using to define what we want to define and work with it, right? So let's talk about how it works also so that we know how to use it. So first, defines the animation keyframe. You must first of all define animation keyframe. So let's just do something simple again, right, to demonstrate this. Let's just say we have a div here. Okay, I'm not in the HTML file. So in the HTML file, just down this button, let's say I have a div here, and this div is saying we don't need anything in there. Actually, I can just say class of buy, right? For instance, you are not buying anything, or I might just say class of ball, right? So here I can come down here and try to style that and move it. So I'll just say dot ball, right? That's the class. So let me give it a width so that it can actually be a ball. Let's say 400 pixel, right? Then I want something that is actually a square, 400 pixel. Then I want it to be rounded. So that will now be border radius of 50%. 50%. So that will make sure that we have a round ball. You won't see it, so we need to set a background color. Background color of let's just use this, right? So I should be able to see this on the page now. So can you see this now? Right. So what I want now is that I want this to actually I want this to translate. I want this to be animated, right? So what you do is that you first of all come down here and do something like add keyframes, right? You just say add keyframes. Then this identifier is the keyframe name, right? So I might just say move ball. The name is up to you. So this is the name of my animation, right? Move ball. Then inside there, you can define different sections, right? Where you want translation or where you want translation to occur. So we are going to be using translation properties, right? Within here. So here I can have at 0%. So you can also use degree depending on what you want. At 0%, right? You might say, you might just say transform, then you say translate. So transform allows you to use all this. You can use translate, you can use rotate here as an option, you can use scale, just like I did the other time here, right? So I'm going to be saying translate in the X direction, right? And you can just say, let's say 450 pixel. So you know what translate means, move from one point to another. So we are saying move from the current point, from the X axis, right, to the Y as is. So I'm just saying translate from here. Okay, let me even just say translate from 0, right? Then I can just copy this and come down again and say once it's 50, you can choose 20, you can choose to use 25 to once 25%, right? Okay, because of what I want to achieve here, so I can just say translate 450 pixel, right? Depending on what you want to achieve. Then when I get to that point, so that means moving from one point to this other point, a distance of 450 pixel in the X direction. Once that does that, done that, I want to say translate Y again in the down direction, in the positive direction. I just say move 100 pixel down, right? So once it's 50% again, 50% the journey, right? I might say transform again, transform, then I'll say translate. You might not use translate, like I'm just translate as an example. Now I want to use translate Y in the negative direction. I want to come back, right? I'll just say translate 450 pixel, right? So it will just move back like that. Then once it's 100%, so I can just say transform, translate. It depends on what you want actually. So there's no limitation to this. Translate Y and just a negative 100 pixel. All right. So if I go to the page now, this will not happen. See that nothing is happening here. So after doing that, you need to use it. So that's when you now come to the object, the element itself, right? This is the element itself. You now put you put the animation here. You must put animation as the keyword. So when you put animation, you can set the shortcut here. You set, first of all, the animation name, which is move ball. Animation name for us is move ball, right? So you can say animation name is move ball. Animation duration, let's just say 1 second. Animation behavior, we can just say infinite, right? So that means it's just going to be doing that like forever. By the time you come here, can you see that? So, and that will be happening. So that just tells you what you can do with animations, right? I want to believe that is clear enough. So let's just move. These are the options you have. Animation duration, I use that 1 second. Animation timing function, I said infinite, right? There are other options there that you can play with. Animation iteration count, animation delay, whether you don't want to start immediately. You can also set the direction of the animation, right? So these are options you can play with. So I don't want to waste too much time on this. So the key difference between transition and animation. So for instance, like I've emphasized already, CSS transition require a trigger. So either your user hovers on a button, clicks on a button and all that. So animation is actually automatic. There is no user interaction that is needed for that to happen. Complexity. So transition is always simple, just start and end state, right? So, but animation is more complex. With at keyframe, looping, delay, you can do multiple things, right? And then control. There is less control with transition, but you have control over this. Like you can set your animation in stages, just like I did here, from 0% to 25 to 50 to 100. Instead of using this, you could have used 0 degree, 100 degree, 90 degree, 270 degree, 300, 360. So depending on what you want there, right? Yeah, so then small UI effects. So overall button, more complex animation like spinners and loaders. And I've shown you example of how spinners work already. So when to use transition or when to use animation. So you have to use transition for small UI effects. So when it has to do with a user hovering on a button, right, you can just use transitions at that point. So you are not expected to overuse this thing. Then use animations for more complex advanced effects, like when you want to load spinner, right, bouncing elements and complex movement, just like we have here, right? We have here. So you can see that this keeps bouncing. This keeps bouncing, like it's shaking. And you can see another one here, right? Constantly moving. You can see this one. So these are more complex than just the over effect you get on get start here, which is transition, right? So that's it with animation and transition. So what I want us to do now is to actually build this. So we'll actually be building this, right? And you can see that this is responsive also. If I were to minimize this, it's responsive, but the major thing is that you'll be able to do something like this yourself, and which will help you understand how animations work. And you can see that this has some glow effect too. So this will also allow you to kind of master some tricks about working with CSS, colors, and background, right? You can see that this is actually looking good. All right, so let's get into that. I will clean up here actually, so that we can start afresh. Then the HTML page too, I'll clean this up. So this is not supposed to be a long thing because it's just that slider effect that I want to work on, and that will be it. All right, so let's just call this, let's change this to let's just say ads add slider, right? Add slider. And in here, we are just going to have a div, right? And we are going to give it a class of, slider. We're going to give it a class of slider. And inside there, we are going to have another div, right? Just so that we package things very well. And here we are going to have a class of, we're going to have a class of slide track, right? So more like slide track, more like you can see that as these are moving, they are moving in a track, right? That's what we mean. They are moving in a track, more like you have, when trains move, right? Trains move on a track. So that's the same thing I'm trying to do here. These are moving on the track. So we have slide track, and inside the slide track, we now start having each ads, right, that we want to actually slide through the track. So we are going to have a class of slide, right? So which will represent each ad that needs to actually move through the track. So inside each of this slide, we are going to have another div, all right, and it's just going to be called add box. So this is the actual ad box, and each ad is going to have a title, heading 2, and we can just copy what is here. Okay, let me just type it out because I think because it's moving, I will not be able to do that quickly. So we have exclusive business deals, right? Exclusive business deals. Then the paragraph text there is going to be boost your startup with cutting edge, right, strategies. All right, so that is the text that you have here. Then I have this fire icon, so you can always copy that online. So I have mine saved there. All right, this code will be pushed to GitHub, right? You can just copy it also from there if you want to. So okay, not there. I think it's supposed to be here. So that is the structure of my ad. So since I have this structure already, of course, that's why we use class, right? If I'm going to form more, all I need to do is just ensure that I duplicate this, right? So this will be the second one, third one, fourth one. I won't want you to watch me doing the same thing, right? So I'll just bring in the rest, right? So that this will not be too long, but we already form our structure. We just need to start styling, and that's all. So you see that it's not something that is going to take time, right? Okay, what scripts doing here? All right, so if you come to the page, right, you won't see anything. This is just what we have until you start turning in CSS, right? That's what we expect. All right, so you notice that I brought in the other ones, right? So you can see that they are basically the same thing. Slide, add box. The heading here is smart finance tips. Learn to add, grow your wealth the right way. So what's usually this, why this can be hard coded, right? This can also be coming dynamically from the backend of your, or the server of your application, and you just look through what is coming and present it here, right? So, but since we are not doing that, that's why we're just staying with this. But this is what we have, right? If I come back here, you can see that this is what we have, no animation. And that's why we said animation add aesthetic and other values to your page, right? So let's continue with this. Now, what we want to do is we want to move to the CSS part where we get this animation part of the application working. So just a general style, right? Just like the practices, there are some resets and all that you need to do. And here we just say target the universal selector, right? And say margin of 0, right? Also padding of 0, more like a reset, right? Then we have box sizing. We also want to set that to border box. I've explained over and over again why we set that to border box. Then we also set this to font family. We say poppins. Poppins. And if poppins is not available, we fall back to sans serif, right? So I want to believe we'll be using sans serif because I didn't import poppins here, which is okay, right? Let us say dark background, because that's what we have on the original design that I'm working with here, right? So you can see that here we have a dark background, right? So let's set that to work. We'll just target the body, the entire body. We set it to display of flex, and you know what, we've talked about flex already. So this is just like a reminder of how flex works. All elements will be moved to the horizontal, right? If you are going to have, but since we just have one body, we are not going to see that effect. So just 5 contents of center. We want to move everything to the center, right? Align items also of center. So once we have that, we can just set the height to the 100 VH, right? So that this will always fit to screen, right? Whatever screen, and that makes it responsive. That's one of the responsive design that that we spoke about in the last section that we had. So if you don't know how to work with responsive design, just check my last section, check my last content, right? You are going to see it there. So I'll also leave it in the description. So you can see that we have all these at the center, right? Even though they are moving, they are still at the center of the page. So that's what this is doing, and it stays fit. You can see that there's no scroll here. This is not scrollable, and that's because we are using 100 VH, and this will just adapt to the view screen here. If you're on mobile too, it's still not going to have that scroll because it's just going to fit to the 100 VH of that particular mobile screen, right? Then away from that, we also have we want to set the background color to ash 111, which is black or not entirely black. We are setting the overflow to hidden so that there will be no scroll effect of any sort, right? Whatever is overflowing this body container is going to be cut off. So if you check here now, you're going to, so can you see what we have? Everything is at the center here, but yet it's not looking like what we want it to look like. So we'll get there, right? Then let's do the slider part, slider container. So slider container, let's have the slider. I think that's the name of that class. If you check here, right, you see that the container of the slider, this is the slider, then it has slide track and slider and add box, other classes. So here, we can have width of 100% so that it spans the entire page, right? Since we wanted to scroll over the entire page along the horizontal. Overflow of hidden. So whatever is more than the container should be cut away. And you can see that effect here also. Can you see that as this is because of the overflow effect? So you can see that this look cut away every time. This look cut away here. Then here too is going to look cut away as it's coming out, right? Before it comes out fully into the screen. That's because we are using that overflow of hidden. Then we have padding of 20 pixel to the top and bottom, 0 left and right? Then we have position of relative. Of course, you know why we are using position of relative, so that the slide track and the sliding items can actually be position absolute, right? If we do want to do that, right? And it will be referencing the immediate parent, which is this one, and not the body. So if you don't understand that position work, also check my channel for CSS positions, and you'll be good to go on that. So let's move on to the next part. So we want to work on the slide track, the slide itself, the slide, right? And for the slide, we want, okay, let's do the slide track first before the slide track. So for the slide track, we want width of 320 pixel, right? Because you can see that what I have here, you can see the width of 320 pixel, just like that. So the width is the same, width of 320 pixel, flex shrink. So flex shrink, of course, I won't be going into this, but we know how that works. If you have taken my CSS section, you will understand what flex shrink is all about. It's just like flex grow, right? But shrink means that it should grow beyond the minimum. It can grow below the minimum. So that's just the simple explanation I will give there. Then margin of 0, that's top and bottom, left and right of 15 pixel, right? So if you check back what we have, these are just previous stuff that you do, right? But you won't see the effect yet until you start tampering with the designs that have to do with the slide track and the ads themselves. So let's do the slide, right? So these are different classes that I have. You can see that here. The slider, the slide track, the slide. This is what I want to do now. Then I will now do the add box itself, which is what will be sliding. This will be sliding in the slide track, right? So here, let's have width of say 3. Okay, I think I have already jumped ahead. So this should be actually my slide, right? This should be my slide, and my slide track. My slide track should be display flex. So this is, don't forget, the slide track is horizontal so that items can move in between it. So it's going to be display flex, which agrees to that. Then we are going to have width of let's just use this calc function, right? And we are going to say 320 pixel. That is for each slide, for each slide item. For instance, don't forget that here, this is actually the each slide. If I come here, you see that this represents each slide. This is the first slide, right? This is the second slide. This is the third slide. All of them are moving in the slide track. So and this one is going to be 320 pixel each. Each of them are going to be 320 pixel. So for me to actually calculate the actual width of this one, automatically, what I can do is I can just say 320 pixel, which is for each slide, right? You can see 320 here, multiply by the total number of items that I have. So let's say 10, right? If you count the total number of items I have, 1, 2, 3, it will be 10, right? So once you do that, that actually automatically calculates the exact slide track that is going to that width that is going to hold the total number of slides that we have there. I hope that actually makes sense. Then we now say, okay, we come back to this animation part because that is our focus, right? So let me put animation here because we want to animate that, but I have not set the animation name and all that. So I'll just comment it out for now, right? So we can now come down here and work on the add section, add box. So for the add box section, right? Very simple. We just say background color of, RGBA, right? Red, green, blue color combination, right? So this is going to be 0, or let's say 255, which is going to generate white 255. Then this one is also going to be 255, and the opacity or the transparency is going to be 0.1, right? Then this kind of give us what we call okay, I don't want to do that. This will give us what we call the glass morphism effect. So, and if you look at what we have here, that effect is actually there, right? So let's move on. Then we have the backdrop filter. So let's say backdrop filter. Where is it? Backdrop filter. We just say blur, right? Blur of 10 pixel. Blur of 10 pixel. So we then have padding of 20 pixels so that we have space around each box, right? Then we have border radius of 20 pixel, right? Just so that we have curved edges like we are expecting. So you can see that this is already shaping now. Curved edges, curved edges, curved edges, curved edges, right? This should already be in horizontal track. Let me just see why I'm not getting that. Maybe there's a CSS name issue. So here I have this. No. I think I've blocked this. This is the slide track. I think that's the issue. So this should not be blocked. So this, then this. All right. So where's the final div? So there's a last div, right? So this div is this way this div is set up is very important. So I close this too early. So this slide track is supposed to hold all this item, right? So I was mistakenly closing it here. So just make sure that each of these slide track are actually, each of these slide container are actually inside the slide track, right? And the slide track is actually inside the slider. So that should, so you can see now that things are already on the horizontal because I know the CSS has already been written, right? Here, where is it? Here we are saying slide track, display flex. So all items should actually go in the horizontal direction. Then the border radius, we set that. We can also set border of 2 pixel, 2 pixel solid, solid. Let's just use RGBA again. RGBA 0 red, 255 green, and 255 blue. Opacity of 0.3 or transparency of 0.3. So that gives us that green effect. So that border, so this is going to give us that neon light. So you can you see that this guy, so it looks like it's lightning, right? So, and it's coming out very well because it's on a black background. So let's move away from that. Then we also have box shadow. Box shadow of 0 pixel along the horizontal, 0 pixel along the vertical, 15 pixel blur, right? RGBA, we are just going to use exactly what we did here. Here. All right. So that's for the box shadow. Then we also have the text align. We're going to align things to the center. That's for the add box now. So we also want position to be set to relative, and overflow on this add box should be hidden. We don't want anything overflowing or causing a scroll effect. Hidden. Right. Then we also want transition. So don't forget we spoke about animations and transition. So while we have an example of animation here, right, on the slide track, we also want transition on each of the add box, right? So we are saying transform. We are using transform here. Transform, and we're just going to say 0.3 seconds. That's the duration. Timing function, is in, is out, right? Then we are going to say box. This is a property, box shadow. Box shadow 0.3 seconds. So this is us defining multiple transition effect. So we are saying transform 0.3 seconds is in, is out, right? Then we are saying box shadow. This is the property, because when you are performing transition, it must be over a property, right? So box shadow. Then we are saying 0.3 seconds, the same thing, is in, is out. So we have two transitions here, right? We are using transform, we are using box shadow over 3 seconds each, and the timing function is in, is out, right? So that's that with that part. Then we have dot add box. So this is where we now want to work on some pseudo element selector, right? Dot add box before. So this is pseudo element selector. You can see that I have double column here. These are some of the things we've talked about already, right, on this channel. So content is going to be empty string, right? And then we are going to have position empty string. Then we are going to have position set to absolute. That's why, if I'm using absolute here, we already have this. This is in relation to this. We are saying before this, right? And since we already have relative here, it's going to reference this and not the actual body. So this is demonstrating that you actually understand how position works. I want this add before this pseudo element effect I want here. I want it to actually take its reference on the add box, and that's why this has to be position relative and this has to be position absolute. If you don't do this, right, this will just go and reference the body of the page, right? Then we have, of course, when you are using this absolute, it works with top and bottom property, top, bottom, right, left property. So top of 0, left of 0, right? So we're also saying the width should be 100%, and also the height should be 100%, right? Width 100%, height 100%. Then background, we just want RGB of what we used here, but we'll change the transparency a bit. So this is going to be, instead of 0.3, it's going to be 0.05. So some of these things, when you are doing yours, you can tweak it, right? Then we are going to have Z index of -1, right? This is just so that this goes behind. That's all what that is doing. So you can see this effect that we have now, right? And let's go on. So let's style the text, right? So dot add inside each of the add box, right? We have H2. So let's type that. For the H2, we want the font size to be 1.5 rem, right? And we want also the color to be hash 00 FFF. All right. Then we want the font weight to be bold. So you can choose to use keyword or use number value. So we want the margin to the bottom to be 10 pixel so that we have distance between the title and the paragraph. Then we want the text transform to be uppercase. So this is how you actually change the text, right? If you currently now, before I save that, okay, I've saved it already. Okay, before I save it, you can see that this is all capitalized, right? But by the time I save it, it should be uppercase or. So by the time I come here, can you see now that Smart Finance, Tips, Marketing Acts? So these are all uppercase, right? So then let's come to text shadow. So 0, this is adding shadow to text, right? This is how to add shadow to text. Along the horizontal 0, along the vertical 0, blur off. It's just like when you are doing it also to box shadow. 10 pixel, then RGB of this also, right? We'll flip it to 0.8 transparency. All right. So by the time you come here, so can you see that this is beginning to, this neon effect is making this to come out well over the gray background color that we have here. So this is just a tricky way of actually making your work come out when you're working with color and fonts and all that. So that's it with that part. Then I think we also have to style the paragraph itself, right? You can see that the paragraph has not been styled here. So let's just add some style to the paragraph. And here we just want to say the font size should be 1 rem, right? And then the color should be this FFF, which is white, hash FFF, right? Then we want the opacity so to be 0.85. So it's going to be, the white is not going to be full because we have reduced the opacity. So you can see that is coming out well now, right? So away from that, then the hover effect, you notice that when I hover on this, nothing is happening. So this is also where we can work with transition. So whatever I'm doing today actually explains all that we've talked about. You can see that there is this transition effect now, right? As we are hovering, as this is animation is happening, transition is also happening when you hover on it, right? So which better explain what we have done. So add box over. So we are trying to register the over effect event, and we are saying transform, and I'm just going to say scale. So I've used this already when I was demonstrating an example, 1.08. So 1.08. Then I'm just going to have box shadow added when you hover. So say box shadow 0 pixel, 0 pixel, 20 blur, 20 pixel blur. Then RGB of this with transparency of 0.6, right? Yeah. So instead of 0.8, we use 0.6. So you can see that whatever you want to do now, it's up to you, right? You are not limited in any way. So by the time you come here, those effects are already there, right? Just that we are yet to write the art keyframe. That's why this is not moving, right? But you can see that what we want is already there. This transition. When I click on this, you can see that can you see this this blur around this guy? That makes this guy kind of glow, right? So that's what I just did there with that over effect. When I over, I'm making this to glow. That's what the CSS is doing. Transform, it makes it bigger. This is what makes it glow, right? That blonde of 20 pixel. So that's it with that. Then let's work on the final part, which is the keyframe, right? So the way you do that is just add keyframe. So just add keyframes. The identifier is the name, right? I'll just call this scroll. So we call this scroll. And then we just say from, the other time I used percentage. So here we are saying from, then we now say transform. What we want is actually transform, then we want to move from one point to another, translate along the x-axis from 0, right? And then we now say to. So this is where you're using keywords now. So I've shown you two options. You can use percentage, you can use degree, you can use keyword. Transform to now say translate again, and along the x-axis too, but this time around in the negative direction, 50%. So that's more like halfway, right? Move forward and come back halfway. So that's what we are doing. Then in order to make this responsive, don't forget that we've talked about responsive design in the last section that we had, right? So here I'll just say responsive. I will write this responsive query. And inside there, we are going to have max width. So when we have max width of 768, which represent mobile screens, right? And below, we are going to have the slider. We're going to adjust the slider to padding. The padding is going to adjust it to 10 pixel, right? Top and bottom, and 0 left and right. If you check what we have before on the slider, right? We have 20 pixels. So we are just trying to reduce it for mobile screens, right? And that's what we are doing here. And the same thing add box. We are trying to adjust the padding also on screens that are lower than 768, right? We have 15 pixel, padding of 15 pixels. So I think basically that is what we want. Now we actually need to use what's it called? The animation that we just created, right? So I told you about it. We need to use it here. So the first thing is the animation name, right? The animation name is going to be scroll, right? Scroll. Then the duration is 20 seconds. Duration is 20 seconds. It's going to be linear. Direction is going to be linear. And then the timing function is going to be infinite, right? So we just have it that way. By the time you come back here, can you see now? This begins to move. So this kind of, this is not just even for beginner, whether you're a beginner, whether you're intermediate, right? This kind of reminds you how transition and animation work, the difference between transition and animation, and you can use both, right? As you can see here, we are animating, right? At the same time, when you over, we are carrying out transition, right? Which kind of looks good. All right, that's it with this particular section. We continue from there, probably some CSS tips here and there. Then we move on to JavaScript.